The film opens with strange kidnappings of individuals. When a female awakens in a room, a stranger is asleep on the bed next to her. She moves gently as she unlocks the door and enters the hallway of a magnificent home while still surveying the space. When she turns her attention to the area, she discovers two men in the neighboring room who are both unconscious. She rushes to the front door and attempts to open it, completely perplexed by the entire scenario. She tries to inspect the windows after being unable to open the door but discovers that all of them have brick walls blocking them. Even after going to the cellar in quest of a way out, she discovers that there are no alternatives available and is disappointed. As she passes out in the passage, she experiences a panic episode. She finally gets out of bed after hearing about a guy. Her awakening helps her regain control as she looks around and discovers more people. Lee is the name of the lady. She is a dancer, and Father Duffy is the one who just woke her up. Jay is a police officer. Max is a fashion designer. AIB is a black aspiring rapper who thinks everything said to him is ethnically driven. Claire is a tennis pro. Francis is a composer of music. Cynthia is a wife, and Shona is an alcoholic who also happens to be the one wearing an ankle tracker. They soon hear an enigmatic voice emanating from the speaker. They are informed by the voice that they were more likely selected for what they are than for who they are. Additionally, they are told by the voice that they have been gathered together to play a game that will be the final test of their humanity. The sole purpose of this activity is to amuse the spectator, who has installed numerous microphones and 75 cameras throughout the home to record everything they say and do. He continues by saying that the person who survives the longest will win this contest. In addition to being set free, the winner will also get to keep $5 million as payment for their participation in the competition. These 9 participants are in disarray when the voice disappears. Even though some people think the game is genuine and others don't, they are all troubled by the ambiguous declaration that only one will survive. Amid the heated debate, Jay produces a gun from his pocket. The glimpse of the gun makes the rest of the group frightened. He tells everyone to settle down and introduces himself as a police officer. The other members of the group believe it is unjust for him to possess a pistol while they are all fighting for their lives, due to the suffering that his little sibling endured at the hands of such white cops in the past. Albie directs his rage toward Jay. Francis suddenly realizes that the Watcher desires them to murder one another. Everyone starts to panic, and Jay joins Francis in saying that Francis will probably be murdered next once everything is over. Jay advises that to escape, they should cooperate. He suggests using a large dining room table to smash the doors. Except for Claire, who is smoking while sitting on the sofa and closely observing them, everyone collaborates. Despite everyone's hard effort, the door does not open. Jay attempts shooting the wall, but nothing happens. Therefore, they determine to examine every inch for any possible holes or secret exits. Once again, their efforts are ineffective. In the meantime, Claire opens the liquor cupboard and consumes the alcohol. Next, they settle down to have a brief conversation. They are discussing the influence of money and what it can accomplish in dire circumstances. They suddenly notice noise emanating from the kitchen. When they go to investigate the noise, they discover a clueless server carrying food. They each have a potato and a piece of chicken for supper. They introduce themselves while eating dinner in the dining area. After supper, they split up into 5 rooms, which have 2 single beds each. The remaining 6 individuals draw names to determine their roommates because the priest and the spouses have separate rooms. There are 3 pairings, Jay and Lee, Claire and Shona, and Max and Albie. After that, they retire to their designated rooms to get some sleep. Later, in one of the rooms, Claire was upset with Shona for looking through her belongings, while Lee and Jay were discussing their personal affairs in the other rooms. They had anticipated a peaceful night, but that was not the case. Someone assaults Jay in the middle of the night and takes his gun. The noise rouses everyone from their rooms, but Lee and Jay can't see the interloper because it's dark. Following their argument, they accuse one another and cast doubt on one another. They detect sounds coming from outside the house in the morning. They hurry to the entrance and start yelling and pounding at the door frantically to draw the attention of the police when Jay informs them that they got there by tracking Shona's tracker. Jay even attempts to fire the gun but to no effect. Someone in the house is calmly watching all the commotion while everyone else is desperately trying to get out of there. That person is Francis. They all lose their last shred of hope with this turn of events. Then Jay hands them the cabinet's key to the liquor. The rest of the group, except for Jay and the father, drown themselves in alcohol as they play music, smoke, and drink to escape their helpless predicament. Jay and the father then retire to their respective rooms. Albie switches the music to a cheerful one to lighten the atmosphere because the music sets an already depressing tone. While they begin to dance, Francis sneaks into his room with a container of alcohol. While there, he smashes the bottle and turns it into a sharp weapon while masking the sound with a blanket. The weapon is then covertly positioned above the restroom door frame. Contrarily, Cynthia and Albie are the only ones swaying to the music in the living room because everyone else has passed out from drinking. A fight breaks out when Francis suddenly strikes Albie for flirting with his wife. As Cynthia tries to break up the fight, Albie pushes her, causing her to strike her head against the railing. She immediately bleeds to death from her cranium and dies there and then. When they are finished, Jay confines Albie to his room and disposes of the corpse in the cellar. They receive a smaller part of the ration in the evening, which only includes potatoes. The priest proceeds to give Albie more food after Jay gives him a potato and his portion of dinner. Just as Jay is about to open the door, Albie rushes out, grabs the metal rod, and slams it mercilessly into Jay's forehead. Jay surrenders his gun to the priest as he takes his final breath. Then they positioned his corpse next to Cynthia's in the cellar. They receive additional food and wine with a positive work note at the following dinner as payment for their impressive performance. The food and drink are divided among them. Francis then takes Albie's share of the meal as well and announces to the group that he will be bringing Albie's food. They no longer eat supper together in the dining room, except for the priest and Lee. Separately, they all wolf down their meals. Albie is found dangling in his room when Lee and the priest visit him after supper to see how he's doing. Francis is the primary suspect because he was the last person to meet Albie using the pretext of bringing his food. The priest visits Max later that day to speak with him. He informs them that, aside from Lee, he cannot rely on any of them and that he has come to their aid to endure the circumstance. At that moment, Max has overcome his greed and asks for more portions of food, but the priest disagrees with them as it won't be fair to other people. When the priest pulls out his gun and orders Max to take only his share, Max refuses and attempts to grab a sizable piece. Claire, who is in another room, is tired of Shona repeatedly handling her belongings. They then start arguing, which results in them slapping each other. When Claire stabs Shona in the side of the neck, killing her, things rapidly get out of hand. Claire is astounded by her behavior as she processes the event. Lee is cleaning her face in the restroom when Francis casually stops by to see her. To electrocute her, he pulls the light fixture off the wall and consumes it in the watery sink. She then falls to the ground in a heap. Lee is discovered on the bathroom floor as the Reverend takes Claire to be locked up. Lee is seated next to the priest, who believes she is deceased. After some time, Francis appears, feigning to be shocked to see Lee. The priest recognizes him, however, and raises the gun to shoot Francis but finds it difficult to do so. Francis then begins to provoke him into shooting him, despite knowing he cannot, and commands him to surrender the firearm. The priest kills Francis because he has no other choice, but the wound is not serious enough to cause him to die immediately. Lee witnesses a gunshot as she is still alive after being electrocuted. She immediately dashes into the adjacent room and uses the restroom. She slips and knocks the toilet lid over, where she finds the glass shards Francis had earlier concealed. Claire enters the kitchen after escaping the Reverend and discovers food out in the open. As she begins to consume the food, Max hiding behind the kitchen counter and contemplating survival startles her. She requests their collaboration as she works. On the other hand, he has some different ideas. To murder Claire, he unbuckles his belt and strangles her. The Reverend shows up at the same time, but Max fabricates a story in which Claire stole the food. Once it becomes clear that he has no intention of saving her life, he orders Max to let go and raises the pistol to his head. He fires at him resentfully. Francis arrives just then and stabs the cleric from behind. Then he pulls out a pistol and shoots Claire. Francis decides to kill the wounded priest as his next target, despite the priest's pleadings for him to be allowed to survive. Francis is now overjoyed and believes that since he is the only person still living, he has won the game. He yells at the watcher, demanding the cash prize. He hears something shattering upstairs at that exact moment. He hurries upstairs to tend to his wound and finds Lee there. She sees Francis and immediately flees for her life, hiding under a bed. But he does ultimately locate her. She stabs him in the thigh with a shard of glass as he pulls her out, then flees. Unfortunately, he is determined to find her. Lee is ultimately surrounded by the terrace. When Francis rushes towards her, they both tumble over the fence and to the ground as they land. Lee notices that the glass fragment is in his chest while she is on top of him. When Francis has passed away, the front entrance suddenly bursts into light. Lee rises from her seat at the table and moves towards the open entrance that leads to a sizable bag. The door closes behind her as she enters the space. She then exits through the open entrance while carrying the bag. She is greeted at the front by shivering individuals who are all hugging bags of cash. She is then directed to another residence with a similar appearance, where she eventually understands that the game has not yet come to an end. The movie ends there. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue making amazing content for you.